I'm Meg. It is the end of the second week of quarantine. I don't like to call it quarantine because that implies we're sick. We're not sick. We're social distancing. We are listening to our elected officials who have instructed us to basically stay home, and that's cool. I've been out a couple times to grab groceries and have noticed when I'm in the grocery store that the baking aisle is decimated. There's no flour, there's no yeast, and so I guess I can only assume that that means everybody's a baker now. And that's great. People should learn to make bread. It's a very important skill. My grandmother, both my grandmothers made bread all the time. It's pretty easy to make. It's delicious. We have flour and yeast here. Don't tell anyone. We have a secret stash. We actually buy yeast in bulk, and so we were lucky. We already had it. And then I got lucky and scored a bag of bread flour last week. So I'm not gonna tell you where because I don't want you running to the store to get it. But if you already do have yeast and flour, you should use it to make some bread because the only other things you need are sugar, salt, and vegetable oil. And you probably have all that, and some water. And so I'm gonna make homemade bread in the style of the little Amish ladies in Pennsylvania. My cousin Julie did a Facebook Live last week and taught a bunch of people how to make it. She is the master and queen of this method. I am only an imitator, but I'm going to use the same recipe that she used because it turns out I have something similar written down from before. So I'm gonna show you how to make it. It's a whole lot easier than you think it is. There's some mystique about bread that, that doesn't need to be there. It's easy. Just follow the instructions, pay attention to it, and you'll be able to do it too. So let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is wake up the yeast. We're gonna put it in some warm water. The water should be warm to the touch, not too hot to the touch. The water should be warm to the touch, not too. The first thing we need to do is put some warm water, 2 cups, into a mixing bowl. You can use a large mixing bowl and you could do all of this by hand just like Grandma did, but it's a lot easier if you have a KitchenAid or this is a Cuisinart stand mixer, heavy duty. It really makes this a much more enjoyable task. So this is 2 cups of water. It's warm, it's not hot, it's just barely warm. Into the bowl with 2/3 of a cup of white sugar. That seems like a lot, but we're using a lot of flour too. So we're gonna dissolve the sugar, give it a quick stir, and then we are going to pour on top of that a 1.5 tablespoons. That's a lot of yeast. This is active dry yeast. We have to soak it in the water for 10 or 15 minutes just to wake it up and hydrate it, and it likes to eat sugar, so that's why there's sugar in here. You can use rapid rise yeast if you want, but active dry is really the best kind to use. Sprinkle it over the top. And by the way, if you're using envelopes of yeast, an envelope is something like 2 1/4 or 2.5 teaspoons. This is a 1.5 tablespoons. So we're gonna let the yeast and the sugar hang out for 5 to 10 minutes until it starts to get a little bit foamy, and then we'll be back. All right, it's been 5 or 6 minutes and it looks like it's starting to get puffy. Let's take a look. Yeah, you can see when it's foamy on the top, that means it's alive. Next, we are going to dump into it a 1/4 cup of oil. Just vegetable oil. I wouldn't use anything that has a strong flavor. You could use avocado oil. I'm gonna stir that in. Then this is a 1.5 teaspoons of salt. And that goes in. And now it's time to add the bread. I mean, now it's time to add the flour. So So we're gonna I'm just gonna dump about half of this in and start the mixer, and then I'll dump, not that much. Let's get it started. Get it mixed up and then we'll add some more. Some of that flour incorporated, and then we'll add the rest to it. Just push it down on the sides a little. I'll have to do this again. You want to make sure all the flour gets incorporated. That's the rest in. This is 6 cups of flour. It seems like a lot, but it's going to make 2 nice fluffy loaves of bread. This has been going for 7.5 minutes or so. Has about 30 seconds left. Steve didn't want to talk over this thing because it's so loud, but it's done all the work for me. So the bread is almost fully kneaded. It's been kneading. You can have a machine knead your bread. How amazing is that? My grandma would have loved that. Oh, all done. Let's take a look. Okay. So it's kind of a stiff bread. It's not like a wet, I mean, it is sticky, but it's not like too wet. I'm gonna pull it off the hook. I'm gonna get rid of the hook. Let's take a look. Oh, it is kind of sticking to the sides. Okay, look at that. I don't know if you can see it. You see that? That's bread dough. It smells great. It's stretchy, but you can kind of see the gluten strands stretching on it. What we do now is I'm gonna put it right back in this bowl. I'm gonna zhuzh it with some oil, and I'm gonna put a little more on top. This is again just plain, I don't know if that's vegetable or avocado, but it's a very plain light oil. Turn it over. Cover it with some plastic film and a damp towel. Just wet it with some water. Lay it over the top like that. I'm gonna place this inside my microwave because it's kind of an enclosed area, and any warmth that gets emitted by the bread as it rises, or the dough as it rises, it isn't bread yet, it's just dough. But that will stay inside that box and sort of help it to rise. We let it go for an hour, and then we're gonna come back and do the next part. And we're back. Quarantine hair don't care. The dough has been rising for an hour in the microwave under a damp towel, which is how Amish ladies have been doing it for time immemorial, and a sheet of plastic film. Look at that. It's super puffy. It's about doubled in size. We're gonna punch it down with our fist. Look at that. See those bubbles? Look at that air bubble right there. You see that? I'm gonna punch it down. We're gonna take it out. Oh my gosh. So the dough gets, it's kind of a stiff dough when you first take it out of the mixer after all that kneading, and then it kind of softens and the flour hydrates a little and the yeast wakes up and says, I need to puff up. So we're gonna divide it into 2 hunks, hopefully equal. We're gonna eyeball it. If we wanted to be extra, we could weigh them. Yeah, that's about right. Okay, we need to spray our pans with cooking spray. the way that our mothers and grandmothers did. These bread pans are probably just a tiny bit too small. Last week when we made this with Julie, we divided it into 2 loaves, and I said to her, "Are you sure we want to do just 2 loaves?" And she said, "Yeah." I had it in my head that roughly 2 cups of flour made 1 loaf of bread. So this half of it would be 3 cups of flour, and it's gonna puff way up, which is great. But well, we'll see what happens. We're gonna roll it out into a rectangle. Because what we're gonna do is just roll it up. I'm gonna start this side because it's smaller. It's kind of a rectangle. We're gonna roll it up. Kind of like a jelly roll. I'm gonna sort of tuck the ends under. This one's maybe not the neatest, tidiest one, but we get to try it again with the other. And you put it right into your loaf pan. So it's the size of, you know, a loaf of bread. Let's try that again. Now, I should say that Julie, cousin Julie, did not roll hers out like this. She shaped hers into a lovely loaf and put it in the pan, and that also works. So you don't have to do this. But I read a recipe somewhere where this is how they did it, so that's how I do it. Okay. This one looks a little funky, but it'll be okay. What we're gonna do now, I'm gonna cover these with plastic film again, and the damp paper, or the damp tea towel again. We're gonna let it sit for 30 minutes. I'm gonna put mine in my fancy double wall oven because we have a proof setting, which just warms it just a little bit, enough to make it rise really puffy. But if you don't have that, it's okay. Because you could really you could put it in an empty oven. You could turn your oven on for just like a minute and then turn it off. That would be plenty. But this is gonna get real big and puffy, and then we're gonna bake it. So we'll see you after it rises. The dough has risen. I ended up letting it go, I think it was 45 minutes, 40 or 45, to do the second rise in the loaf pans. So I'm gonna take it out of the proofing oven, show you it, and then we're gonna put it in the oven to bake. Look at that. Back to the oven we go. Wait till you see these puff up when they get in the oven. I'm just gonna leave them right on the cookie sheet. There we go. Set a timer for 30 minutes at 350 degrees and watch the magic happen. The bread is almost done. It smells amazing in here. It's all puffed up. It's about 2 minutes left, and I'm gonna leave it in for the full 30. So this is a good starter loaf. It's a really good way to learn about bread and how the texture of the dough works, and learn about yeast and what it does. It's a chemical reaction, basically. It's kitchen chemistry. If you are one of those people who went to the grocery store 2 weeks ago and bought like 4 bags of flour and all the yeast that was on the shelf, and you're sitting there with it waiting to figure out something to make, may I suggest you try this loaf. And you probably will do it once and you'll be hooked. There are lots of other kinds of bread that you can make. A sourdough, like that's a whole other world. That's a whole other topic for maybe people who couldn't buy the yeast because the rest of you bought the yeast, you can actually make a sourdough starter out of flour and water. We'll get to that. But in the meantime, I think this one's almost ready to take out. Let's have a little sip of wine because it's 5 o'clock. Not just somewhere, but right here. Y'all, I wish you had smell-o-vision. Oh, it did split. Look, we were talking about the top of the loaves splitting. Steve says I should have used a razor to cut, here I'm going to this, to cut a slice that way, and that would have kept it from splitting. That's the first time I've ever seen one split like that. But that would have kept it from splitting. I'm gonna brush it with some butter because when is melted butter ever a bad idea? Move your other camera. Look at that. I think that slit in the top would disqualify me from first prize at the county fair, but it's still gonna taste great. Look at this bread. So it's really, it's a little too warm to slice it, but I have not ever been known for my patience. Look at that. I'm just gonna, I mean, I cut this one where it split. I'm gonna cut a slice. It's really warm. It's so soft. Look at that. Look at that. Oh my gosh, here, watch this. Oh, it's hot. Oh my gosh. It's really soft and kind of fluffy. I'm gonna try it, even though it's hot. Oh my gosh. I hope that now that you're at the end of this video, you have already started making it and your yeast is already starting to get a little bubbly on the sugar water. And I've already measured out your 6 cups of flour, because in about 2.5 hours, you're gonna have this. Look at that. It smells so good. Here's the great thing. So this recipe makes 2 loaves. You can put it out and your people are gonna just devour it. It's really good the first day. You'll serve it with dinner. The next morning you'll toast it for breakfast. Then at lunchtime you're gonna make grilled cheese from it because that's what your son's gonna ask for. And then you're gonna be like, what am I gonna do with that extra loaf? And you're gonna go give it to a neighbor. Maybe not now in quarantine times, but back when we used to be allowed to do nice things for our neighbors, like give them homemade bread that we made with our hands. That's what you would do. I think you should make it. I hope that you were lucky enough to score some flour and some yeast at the grocery store. Don't be deterred if you don't have a KitchenAid or a big stand mixer. Just do it by hand. What else do you have going on right now? You have time. You can do it. You need the workout. Your muscles are atrophying because you've been sitting around all day. And so you should try it. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I think that's down there. Please tell a friend. And if you make this bread, please leave a comment and let us know how it worked out. Stay safe, be well. See you next time.